constitution that was approved at General Synod 28 and needs to be ratified by 2/3 of the conferences for it to go into effect. A couple of things that make this one a little different than some of our other resolutions today is this is a straight yes or no, up or down vote. There cannot be amendments made to this amendments to the Constitution as it has already been approved by the General Synod. So what I would like to do is I'd like to invite the moderator from that hearing about unified governance, if Paul would come forward and talk about that hearing, tell us a little bit about how that went.
I'm Paul Foreman from University Congregational United Church of Christ of Seattle. And first of all, I'd like to thank Marv. I didn't get a chance to thank you previously, but he was the host in our hearing. So thank you, and thank all those who helped set up that room that we went to, which was very empty and without chairs and whatever. But we made it workable. And then I want to thank the 5 national representatives that we had and our guest who was present in order to demonstrate both the presently existing body and what the change would mean if it were ratified by the 38 conferences. We opened up for questions first for those who were assigned to the hearing and voting, and then we had a short period of time toward the end for other guests who were present in the hearing to be able to express themselves. There was both support and rejection expressed. The major issue that was expressed on behalf of making the change was that it would be a more efficient and effective way of governing the 3 major ministries, and the major opposition position that was expressed seemed to be around the issue of the loss of representation. I think those were the 2 critical factors. A vote was taken at the end of the hearing, and it was, of the 33 votes that were cast, 28 voted to support the change, and 5 voted to reject it. So, Mr. Moderator, that's my report.
Thank you. So at this time, I would invite any questions, comments, concerns about the unified governance proposal to come to, there's the mic again in statement of favor and opposition, as well as this neutral mic here for any questions that you might have about these constitutional amendments. And this would be the 2-minute timer. Vice Moderator Chris Hansen is going to help with that.
Sally Balmer, Pilgrim Anacortes. The phrase loss of representation that Paul just said is a huge one. So if you could clarify the specifics of what that really looks like for the rest of us, even though perhaps we were supposed to read that lovely 42-page document through and through. Is that the one, or is that just would really like that? So someone from that.
I would invite someone from who serves on the national setting from our conference, or if there's someone who might be able to speak to that representational change, I think that would be in order.
Carol Stanley, Eastgate. I'm your local church ministries board of director representative. It is significant change. Currently, right now, we have over 300 members serving on all the boards and committees, and that number will be reduced to 55. So there will be significant representation challenges. If you do read through that long document, it does specify half have to be men, half have to be women, half have to be people of color, half not. 6 different regions are represented by conference ministers at any one time to make sure that regions are represented. That was our answer after 8 years of struggling with this issue, to have as best representation as we could. Does that,
What page is it? Do you know?
Thank you.
I don't know the page,
Thank you.
but I came up here to speak to it.
Yay, Carol.
Again, Carol Stanley, Eastgate, and your local church ministries representative. I think as all of your representatives can attest to, that this has been going on for over 8 years as we have struggled to be stewards of finances, stewards of program, stewards of efficient governance in a responsible way for the United Church of Christ. And after much negotiation, much conversation, it is the recommendation from local church ministries, with only a couple out of my committee of 55 saying no, the majority of us say yes. And I do believe it is the best way to go into the future as the United Church of Christ. The other point I want to make is we have only 150 staff at the national setting and over 300 board members. So that's 2 board members to every 1 paid staff.
Mike Denton, Conference Minister. I speak in opposition to the amendment. The issue around representation is a significant one. Essentially what that means is right now we have several people within our conference who are representing us on the national level. If we move to this new structure, there is no guarantee that we'll have any representative from within our conference that will be serving on the national level to represent our interests. The Synod piece, when we get together around that, that are representatives from across the UCC in a variety of settings and a variety of our conferences. The new unified board will be one that will be Synod ad interim, making decisions when Synod is not meeting without being a representative body. In and of itself, I think that's a troubling and difficult piece. There's a recommendation that up to every 6 years, each conference has representation upon this unified board, but that is not a guarantee. That's a recommendation within the structure. So we, as our conference, and a lot of other smaller conferences, could hypothetically not have a representative on this national unified body for many years, and if not a decade.
Donald Schmidt, Admiral Church, West Seattle. I want to speak in favor of this for a couple of reasons. One of them is I think that we're really top heavy, and I don't think that we're terribly active because of that. To have a board that is the humongous size that it is, I think is very inefficient. I know of other churches that are also in the very progressive stream, like us, such as the United Church of Canada, which is a much smaller structure, and they're almost our size, and I think they do very well. In terms of the representation, and I'm part of a minority, excuse me, being gay, and I take representation on boards and committees very seriously. The reality is, if we're committed as a church to representation, it will happen. And if we're not, it won't. Because we can have representative bodies and listen to them and then do whatever in heck we want, or we can really have a commitment to a diversity and a representation and find ways to make that work. So I'm not sure that that's really, while I can understand caution around that, I'm not sure that it's cause for panic, as opposed to the fact that I think a much smaller board will be much more efficient and thus perhaps be able to express a variety of representation and diversity a little better. Thanks.
Thank you. I see you at the mic. We're taking the point of clarification at the neutral mic, and then we'll come back to you.
Yes, point of clarification. If somebody could speak to, what is the problem we're trying to solve here with this motion?
Okay. Could you tell us a little about who you are, where you're from?
Yeah, I could. I forgot to do that. I'm Tom Caldwell, Plymouth Church, Seattle. And 8 years we've been trying to figure out something. What is it that's not working that this is going to fix?
Thank you. Is there someone who might be able to speak to that, and then we'll get to you? Okay.
I'm Kathy Foreman, University Congregational, UCC Seattle, and I represent the Pacific Northwest Conference on the Office of General Ministries Board of Directors at the national setting. And I think there are several issues that this proposal addresses. One is that right now we have 4 covenanted ministries, each its own separate corporation with its own separate constitution and bylaws and board of directors that range from 50 to 60 or more people, in order for the United Church of Christ to speak with one voice on any issue or one across the denomination strategic plan, each of those 4 separate bodies have to agree to exactly the same wording of whatever the directive or document is, which can be quite time-consuming, and why it's taken 4 or 5 or 6 years for this proposal to come before the conferences, because of the amount of time that it has taken to move this from one body to another body to another body. If all the boards are called to meet together, it's well over 200 people that have to be flown to Cleveland and housed and meet. It is in many ways an inefficient use of staff time. Each covenanted minister has to report not only to his or her covenanted ministry body, but also to the executive council. And so it's just a lot of hoop jumping, and that's and a lot of cost. And not so much money as cost in time and energy. And that's, I think it's fair to say those are the largest issues that generated this proposal.
Thank you. Tom, does that answer your question?
Yes, that helps a great deal. Thank you.
My name is Tom Miller. I'm from Pilgrim Church in Anacortes. I was at both General Synod 27 and General Synod 28, where this proposal was, quote, debated. The delegates there were never really given the opportunity to debate this proposal. Those of us that had real concerns were never given the opportunity to express those concerns. The only ones that were allowed to talk were those in favor. Now we, the Pacific Northwest Conference, are being asked to ratify this proposal. So hopefully I can express my concerns here. The proposal eliminates any involvement of the conferences in the selection of the members of the new board. The new board will be selected by a nominating committee. We were told in Tampa that those members would be, quote, technocrats, not members of local churches. The other concern I have is in the makeup of the board. To me, it sounds like a quota system. I was under the impression that we got rid of quotas when we got rid of segregation. I am strongly in favor of single governance. I'm not in favor of this proposal because of the way the board is made up. I voted no at General Synod, and I will vote no today. Thank you.
I believe Neil was next, and then we'll come.
Clint.
I'm sorry, Clinton.
Clint Camden, United Church and University Places. I've represented you people on the national boards for parts of the last 18 years. I have served from that to the national boards. And I know when we cut the number of people we have representing us at the national, we lose. We lose because people don't get the word. Where we had 12 people, we got down to 6 in an individual board. They just can't do all that work. And neither could I. So I'm afraid that I have to vote no on this. And thank you for letting me be a representative for you for the last 18 years.
Kathy Foreman, University Congregational, UCC Seattle. I speak strongly in favor of this as your representative for the last 5 years. I've seen the cumbersome, unrealistic, and unproductive use of time. This is governance. This is oversight and strategic planning. It is also serving as a check and balance for the national staff. So I hear the longing for the past with huge boards that were also program advocates. I see this as actually freeing some money from governance, letting governance be small and lean and move with speed and make decisions quickly in a time that calls for that, but also free some funds from transporting governance people to Cleveland to meetings to go for training and experiences in far more, believe me, enriching ways than sitting looking at budget documents and approving kind of the nuts and bolts of governance. I'd like to clarify two things. One, we have never sent people directly from local churches to national boards. There is a national nominating committee, and those folks are elected by Synod at the recommendation of the nominating committee. It is true, from my opinion, that the procedure at Synod was not handled as well as it could be, but there were opportunities for people to speak in opposition, and the yes vote was overwhelming. So I ask you to consider this. I think it's a move into the 21st century, and I think it's a move into a more effective, streamlined, quick-moving, quick-acting system of governance at the national level with no harm in the process to the local church.
Judy Edwards, member of St. Paul's United Church of Christ in Seattle. I'm all for streamlining. I think most of us are. I have some of the same concerns that have been expressed here before, but besides that, it's sort of like in Congress when there's a bill. There's all sorts of other language in there that's been changed, which doesn't directly relate to this. And I was trying to save trees, so I didn't print it out. But I noticed that it's like they're changing this and they're changing that, and I think that there are concerns. I have concerns. I'm not even going to get into those because those aren't the main point of this. But I think they need to rework it.
Yeah, I'm Ben So. I'm a member at Bethany UCC in Seattle, and I'm also your national rep on Wider Church Ministries, the national setting. And I just wanted to reaffirm what many of my fellow national reps have already said. I can speak personally to the difficulties of working in the current structure. And I think, not to say some of the same things, but the thing that I really noticed that I think has remained here is just how paralyzing and how confining the current structure was. So the conversations that would naturally occur between, say, Chris and Carol and Kathy and others in the national setting were truly legally and physically impossible because of the way the meeting structures are set up, because we're meeting separately, because we're meeting sometimes in different places and different times. There literally is no way for the sort of essential communication you need to have between these very interconnected parts of the church. It'd be as if we all here divide ourselves into four groups. One group met in Wenatchee in March, and another group met in Spokane in June, and yet you tried to come together and come up with some kind of common understanding of what it is that we together are trying to do. And given what we've heard from the speakers, our wonderful keynote speakers, I think those themes of flexibility and experimentation and being able to be kind of nimble and move where the Spirit is moving us. I think the structures that we're currently in at the national setting right now do not allow that. And while this new proposal, the new governance structure, is not a panacea, it's not going to get us to the promised land, but it will get us closer to it. Thank you.
Megan Pritchard, Prospect Congregational UCC Seattle. I would love to hear a little more about what this does for the workload of the people who are on the board.
Is there someone that might be able to speak to that question of how this affects the workload for those who are serving on those national boards?
Serving on a national board of such importance will certainly take a lot of time and will require probably this new board to meet more often, to probably be engaged in committee work throughout. But we are hoping to draw people. The plan around diversity is also to expand so that we have greater array of competencies so that we are able to bring together people not only around representational issues,
but also their particular strengths and expertise around finance, around technology, around church development, other expertises that the nominating committee would be able to look toward. And one of the strengths of having a smaller governing body is that they can meet more often together to compile the work. Right now, we try to squeeze a lot of significant amount of work into a small amount of time just because it is so cumbersome and expensive to get this many board members all together. So that I think they can do their work more efficiently.
At the risk of being silly, but in an attempt to be consistent, might you tell us who you are and what your local church membership is?
My name is Ben Guess, and I'm a member of Pilgrim Congregational UCC in Cleveland, Ohio, and from the national staff.
Thank you. Megan, does that answer your question?
Could I say one more thing about that?
To address their question?
Yeah, this Kathy Foreman again. I just want to say that one of the pieces, because there has been a concern about how much more time it will take if you're on a smaller board, has been because the board will be smaller, subcommittees will be smaller, and it's anticipated that much of the work can be done via conference call or Skype, independent of needing to go to Cleveland. So it won't be going to Cleveland all the time, allowing more people from more walks of life to participate.
Okay, does that answer your question? Do we have another point of clarification or question?
Terry Tigan, Plymouth UCC Seattle, and I don't know, I may be the only one, but I'm feeling pretty conflicted right now. There are some people who are speaking in favor of this who I deeply respect. They've been going to the national setting, and I'm hearing them say this is really an important move for a lot of different practical as well as kind of deeper reasons beyond practicality. But I hear our conference minister, who is someone who I consider to be quite tuned into where the church is emerging and the vision that's unfolding. And so Mike, I don't want to put you on the spot necessarily, but what I'm really kind of wondering here, Tom lifted it up, what's at stake? And I guess what I'd like to know is from Mike, who I respect very much for his kind of global thinking, is what, beyond representation, I mean that's a fairly broad term, but in terms of what I'm imagining is that there's somehow, by having more people working at that broader level, more people understanding what's happening, it kind of filters out, and there may be more opportunity for emergent thinking and novel and different ways of approaching ministry. That's what I'm surmising, but Mike, if you'd say a little more, it would help me, I think, get a sense, because I really respect both sides of this, if there's sides. Thank you.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing you ask, Terry, is you're asking Mike to speak a little bit more about his thoughts on it, about his opinion. Is that correct?
Right. I'd say a couple things. First of all, I respect the process that we go through within the life of the church, where together we figure out what's the right thing to do. It's not just one person. Oh, okay. All right, can't do this. I was trying to face you at the same time. I'll stand right here. This is fine. Mike Denton, conference minister. Local church membership is at Plymouth. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Which Plymouth?
Plymouth, Seattle. Hi, thank you. So sort of back to that question, I think the first thing that's really important to say, with any conversation or discussion that we have, is that although there are different leaders and different people that respect, it's important that even if I say something, that if you disagree with me, I don't think I need to say this to UCC people, but if you disagree with me, you disagree with me. If you agree with me, you agree with me. If you disagree or agree for another reason, that's exactly what we should do. We're driven by conscience and spirit and the way that God is moving among us and within us and through us. And so that, in and of itself, is the most important thing. Okay. So with that said, some of the things that I'm concerned about is that as far as some other pieces, is where there's that question about what this will mean to the board and what the workload will be. It's a big we do not know. Where right now we have multiple boards that sometimes have found themselves deadlocked. The other option is we might have one board that finds itself deadlocked. And with the multiple boards, part of, I think, the giftedness of this is there's another angle from another place to try things and more suggestions that could come up and move up and rise up to the top is the best option. When you have a smaller group of people who are working with a smaller time frame and have a wider number of issues, the creativity that's necessarily generative within that kind of process and that kind of structure is something that I'm concerned about. During a time and a place where there's more of a flattening out in a lot of the ways that information feedback loops work within just the way of the world, to have a smaller structure with a body where there is not yet instituted a clear feedback loop into the work that they're going to be doing or that's going to be talked about, I'm concerned that they're going to have the information they need and the support that they actually need when a decision is made or handed to us or shared with us. I am particularly concerned again, and I said this before around that representation question, because I think this is no small thing. We're essentially moving from what we now have as a representative body. 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
This is why it would have been nice if we could have had amendments.
Yeah. Jeanette Salamini, the other Plymouth Church in Colfax. I'm not the pastor there, but I'm a member there. I was in seminary when this polity was put into action. I did my polity course while the process that put this formation into process was happening. So I remember how this was going to be so much better than the old system. And I think it was in many ways. The concern that I have is being a member in this conference in a small church on the east side where we don't really get noticed very much and forgotten sometimes, and think of it this way: we are the Pacific Northwest Conference. We are as far away apart from Hawaii as you can get from Cleveland. If we're not represented as a region, now I understand there are all kinds of representation issues: lesbians, gays, women, men, color, pale, I don't know. There are all kinds of representation issues, but one of the representation issues is our representation as a region. That is how we form our identity. We're the Pacific Northwest Conference. And if a small church in the Pacific Northwest Conference, and there are others who occasionally are forgotten, how much more is a whole conference that is in the Pacific Northwest and is a small conference by and large, and sort of a not exactly in the center of the country, we might get a little bit forgotten if there isn't someone there constantly reminding them that we are here. And that's my main concern with this. I absolutely agree that there is probably a better way to do it than what we have, but this is not, in my opinion, the better way to do it.
David Kratz, Fountain Church, Seattle. I think there is a difference between governance and action. And at our local church recently, a couple years ago, we went from electing 43 people to electing 17. And part of the reason that we did that is we had too many people sitting around in ministry meeting or board meetings rather than going out and doing stuff. And my hope is that given what Ben was talking about this morning, that we'll have a chance to energize people to get into the action that's happening. Most of our representatives are going to be involved in stuff rather than sitting around looking at budgets, would be my first thought. The second thing is, you know, one of the reasons why the past thing hasn't worked is because people have been stuck on their money. And we have all those endowments that have had different boards and people protecting their turf, that it's really time to get rid of turf.
Yvonne Holmes from the United Churches of Olympia. I had a question. I think there was a number tossed out about how many conferences need to approve, and I'm wondering if we know how many conferences have already approved, what those numbers are, and how many have yet to vote. I'm also wondering if the general concept of streamlining governance is well thought of, but there's some particulars that make it that we don't want to approve this particular version at the national level. Is there a plan if it doesn't feel like, will they go back and revisit it and try to make it better?
So
So I think I heard two questions, and just in case, I'm going to restate them just in case not everyone heard. I think the first question I heard was, where are we at in the ratification process? How many other conferences have voted, and how many have yet to still vote on the ratification? And then the second question I heard is should this not pass, passed by the needed number of conferences, what's the next step? Is there another plan in terms of moving towards a streamlined or unified or some other form of governance? Is that
Right,
correct?
and addressing the particular concerns that are thorns in the side of that.
Is there someone that can speak to either of those questions?
Ben Guess, Executive Minister of Local Church Ministries. To date, I think I'm right on this, that there have been 8 conferences that have met and taken a vote, and 8 of them have ratified this proposal. None at this point have voted not to ratify it, and 2 conferences are meeting this weekend, yours and also Northern California Nevada Conference.
And the number of conferences needed to ratify the amendment?
2/3, which would be 26 conferences.
There's a second question. Can someone speak to the second question?
If this is not ratified, there is not a backup plan. It would basically mean that we were starting all over. And would like to remind you that this has been an 8-year process in which a task force of unified governance first wrestled, and it came to the covenanted boards, and the Office of General Ministries and local church ministries both rejected that for different reasons. It came back a second time, and other boards rejected it for a variety of reasons. And then it came through a third incarnation, and the Unified Governance Task Force kind of had a moment of clarity around making changes that would be accessible to all, acceptable to all of the covenant ministry boards, and that was affirmed, as well was a vote taken at General Synod. The prior General Synod in Grand Rapids that was asking that the church move forward on this, and that eventually brought these proposals that you are now considering for a second vote, actually the constitutional and bylaw changes at General Synod in Tampa. So it's been an 8-year process.
Does that answer your question, Ron? I don't see where you're at. Yes, okay, thank you.
All for the question.
Any other statements in opposition or in favor? Or
Question was called for.
Oh, it was. I didn't hear it. Thank you. Were you? Did you have another question, or were you?
Question's been called.
Because
Okay.
I'm conflicted also.
You can't talk, you got to do it. Question's been called.
Yeah, Linda Gasperga from Bethany.
Linda, I'm sorry, the question for a vote has been called.
Vote to end debate or not?
So is there a motion to end debate?
No.
Or is there a vote to end debate? All in favor, raise your pink cards.
Of ending debate.
Debate. I was just showing you the raising of the pink card. I'll do it for all opposed. Again, just in case you're curious, you raise the pink card like so. All abstaining. Motion carries. And I'm going to ask my tellers if they would go to the corners. Over here.
So what you going to do?
I'm sorry, I can't debate.
So the debate is ended. So now I'm entertaining a... So now it's an up or down vote, yes or no, to ratify the constitutional amendments to the bylaw, the amendments to the Constitution in accordance with the proposal for unified governance. All of those in favor, raise your pink cards. And I'm going to ask that my tellers would go ahead and do a count just to make sure that... Keep them nice and high, please. Okay. You may put it down. All of those opposed, please raise your cards. Again, for my tellers. Thank you. And any abstentions? Thank you. The motion carries to ratify the Unified Governance proposal, the amendments to the Constitution. We will move next to the resolution for corporate personhood. If our moderator, Tom Sorensen, could come forward and tell us about that here.
Tom Sorensen, Monroe Congregational United Church of Christ, Monroe. We had a lively discussion and debate of the resolution presented by Justice and Witness on corporate personhood. The concern that that resolution addresses is the United States Supreme Court decision in Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission that effectively removes restraints on corporate money in elections, basically. The hearing significantly amended the resolution as it had been presented. And John, Jim, I don't know, we sent it to you. Do you have it to put up?
Nominations? No. Excuse us. That's our song. We'll just be a minute if you want to.
Okay. There were significant amendments made to the resolution as it was presented and as you had it in your annual meeting booklet. Specifically, most importantly, the actual resolved language was substantially altered. In fact, the resolve that you have there was taken out and replaced. The original resolved read, "Therefore be it resolved that the Pacific Northwest Conference of the United Church of Christ call upon the U.S. Congress to pass and send to the states for ratification an amendment to the U.S. Constitution and amendment to the U.S. Constitution clarifying that the individual rights enumerated and implied by the U.S. Constitution are intended to protect living human persons and are not applicable to legally constructed persons such as corporations." The major amendments, we corrected some typos that I can go through if you want, but they didn't change any meaning. There was a whereas was added after the whereas that you have that refers specifically to Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission. The hearing added a whereas that reads, "And whereas this decision has radically overturned a long history of prior decisions and precedent to purposefully allow and enable a direct attack on the sanctity of one person, one vote, creating a tool now being used to intentionally undermine the electoral process as both open and transparent." And then, most significantly, the resolved language was changed to read, "Therefore be it resolved that the Pacific Northwest Conference of the United Church of Christ believes that the United States Supreme Court's ruling in Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission is constitutionally wrong in that it allows money to buy elections or control the public discussion on any important issue, neither results which could have been intended by anything written in the United States Constitution. And therefore be it further resolved that the Pacific Northwest Conference of the United Church of Christ call upon the United States Congress to pass and send to the states for ratification an amendment to the United States Constitution or through some other effective vehicle to clarify that, 1, money is not speech, and 2, that the rights awarded corporations through Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission be reversed. After much discussion and a lot of proposals and rewriting, that form of the resolution was unanimously accepted by the hearing with a recommendation to this body that it be adopted.
Thank you. Is there someone, an author of the resolution who would like to speak on its behalf, or questions or comments to either one?
Jeanette Solomani, Plymouth Congregational Church in Colfax. It was my impression that we are not allowed to tamper with the whereases, so I'm wondering if that will have to be left out in any event, the additional whereas that they've added.
That's my understanding as well. But is there someone, Steve, did you want to speak to that?
That's correct. Historically, we do not change the whereases. It's the therefores that we vote on, and that's the part, that's the active part of the document that we deal with.
Yes.
I'm Doug Shepard with the Bellingham Church. I had a small role in this. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for about 33 years. I didn't want to ignore the work done by the people that proposed the resolution, but I found it very troublesome. In the Constitution is not just the right to free speech. There's the right to freedom of religion, right to remain silent, right to counsel, presumption of innocence, due process, equal protection. Most of the churches here are corporations. And I personally believe the decision is wrong and unconstitutional. I proposed the language that suggested that it was wrong and unconstitutional and not found any place in the Constitution. And I proposed the language to the second whereas that I could live with if we have to go through a constitutional amendment, because many judges have told me that I've been wrong before, and I could be wrong. Maybe it is unconstitutional. That indicates that what we're focusing on is that money is not speech. And what we're focusing on is the special rights given to money in the decision itself if it's not reversed. But I think it's very dangerous and very troublesome to attack all the rights that exist for corporations, including churches, that we find in the Constitution. So it's been narrowed, but I think it still addresses the intent of the people that put the resolution in front of us, and I'm much more comfortable with it.
Dave Shaw, Spirit of Peace, United Church of Christ in Sammamish. I guess my question is, are we going to vote on suspending the precedent that we are not to tamper with the whereases, or what are we actually, are we discussing it with the whereases as printed, or are we able to vote on whether or not to change our precedent, our tradition of not tampering with whereases?
Could I address that? As I understand the procedure, the whereases are not part of the resolution. They explain the original resolution. We did not have time or the background to deal with the whereases, and I don't want to spend the time. It was troublesome with some of the whereases in there, and what they say are using some of the language for the abortion people and some of the language for the same-sex marriage people when we talk about what God's version of the Constitution is. I might suggest a friendly amendment that takes the whereases out of the resolution. It was there to explain the background for it, and I don't know who proposed it, but I would propose a friendly amendment that just gets rid of the whereases, because they really don't fit when you completely redo the resolution. who originally brought it in front, but I would move that we strike the whereas. It still exists and we understand the background of it, but let's don't make it part of the process.
Do we have the author of this resolution here?
That's what happened last year.
Rich Gamble.
Yep.
Yes, we did.
We could get a company of about 20 people to be the author of this resolution. It's sausage, people. We all make it. So I will say, oh, I'm sorry. My name is Richard Gamble. I am the pastor of Keystone United Church of Christ, a church that's smaller than the one in Iowa, and proud of it. Okay. The whereases are there not to talk about what the constitutional framers had in mind about the notion of God or humanity. It's talking about what we theologically state as the special role of humans as opposed to corporations. So that's why that's there, and talking about rights, affording rights to corporations because they are humans was the part of the initial resolution. So, what other question do you have?
The other question I would have is that I believe there was a friendly amendment about removing the whereas that was put on during the hearing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That was not the amendment that was made? All of them?
Removing all of the whereases.
It's not friendly.
I'm sorry, what?
Not your turn.
I think the whereases still stand as a statement of our faith, and I would support keeping them in.
I see someone at the neutral mic.
Clarification point, Mike Denton, Conference Minister, member of Plymouth Church in Seattle. The format of the resolution itself is a format that's also based on the Synod format for resolution. So the format with the whereases as well as the physical and theological rationale are within the format that we've had for about the last 3 years for a resolution. So just to answer part of that question.
So my understanding of the whereas, in terms of keeping with what we have done, the whereas that were modified or changed during the hearing would not be a part of the document that's would be coming before this body to vote on, that it would be remaining with the original whereases that it had before it went into the hearing. Point of clarification?
Last year changes were made to resolutions in the whereas clauses. They only were allowed via friendly amendments. So if the authors allow them, then that's what happened last year.
Who are you?
Yeah. Right, could you
Just tell us who you are, fast.
David McGee, another rogue from Plymouth Church, Seattle. Thank you.
Yeah, I hate to do this to all of you. I'm Tom Caldwell from Plymouth Church, Seattle. I'm the guy that wrote the extra whereas. The reason that we wanted to put that in, and I felt it was important, and it was ratified very strongly by the group that was there, is it focused in on some of the underlying belly stuff that was important to the group as to why we want to do this. I think it would be very unfortunate if we struck the whereases, any of them, including the one that was added by the group. We thought it was appropriate to have it in there. As in terms of the resolutions, we started with one resolution. Excuse me, I'm speaking about something we're not voting on. I'm voting against stripping the whereases.
I'd like to ask the author of the document.
Friendly amendment, so it's off the table. I don't. If the people that propose them don't view it as a friendly amendment,
It's off the table.
Correct.
We don't need to worry about it. They stay in.
I'm not advancing
unless it was accepted as a friendly amendment. So we're voting on it with the whereases in. That's fine with me.
Now the
Doug Shepard, Bellingham. Yeah.
Thank you. Rich, I believe that the question that I need to have answered is the whereas that was put in during the hearing. Is that acceptable to you as a friendly amendment to
It is.
Thank you. Glad we got that. Now, as to the content of the be it resolved or any other questions regarding this resolution, Does anyone have a question or comment that they'd like to approach a mic and share?
Tom Caldwell, Plymouth, Seattle.
Well, you look a lot like a guy who...
I do. I was over there a moment ago. You're right. Different times, different mics. I'm very much in favor of this resolution as it now stands. The combination of corporations as persons and money as speech is having a devastating effect on our society and on a lot of processes that need to be open and transparent. This has really muddled things up in a way that delights certain parts of our society, but does not delight. I'd like to think it doesn't delight any of us in this room. I hope you would vote for this. The intent that we have is to equip our leadership, particularly Mike Denton. Where are you, Mike? This is a torpedo being sent your way. But to equip our leadership in the conference to have some conversations with people who are substantive, that has the possible hook in it of an amendment, which is a reach. Not sure we would ever get there, but there's other efforts going on nationally to do this also. And we wanted our voice as the people of the Pacific Northwest Conference to be part of that discussion, and we felt this resolution would do that.
I have a request, since we're just really talking about Kathy Foreman University Congregational. Is it possible technologically to just, because we can't read this, and it's not the same thing that's in our packet, could that just be bumped up, that blue stuff? Thanks.
Can we bump up the blue stuff?
Bump in the blue. We're bumping the blue.
Good, good. Glad to know we can do that.
Well, we're not going to say I want to take out the fact that...
Consider the blue bumped.
To have some of the rights the deaners have and other stuff to speak and move. We want to take that. Take that on. The screw up. The Supreme Court by a very narrow margin. It's at 132 now. Another day they get it, so one at a time.
And then I'd like to call for the question. Jane Armstrong, Normandy Park Congregation.
Thank you. So we will vote to end debate. All those in favor of ending debate and calling the question? All those opposed? And abstaining? Just as a reminder, this is a resolution of witness, and the resolution of witness has a 2/3 clearance, majority, for passage in this body. So for that, I'd like to again ask my tellers, as we're looking for a 2/3 majority for this to pass. Do you want me to read the be it resolved one more time? Okay. Is that the first one up there?
Yep.
Therefore, be it resolved that the Pacific Northwest Conference of the United Church of Christ believes that the United States Supreme Court's ruling in Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission is constitutionally wrong in that it allows money to buy elections or control the public discussion on any important issue, neither results which could have been intended by anything within the United States Constitution. And therefore, be it further resolved that the Pacific Northwest Conference of the United Church of Christ call upon the United States Congress to pass and send to the states for ratification an amendment to the United States Constitution or through some other effective vehicle to clarify that 1, money is not speech, and 2, that the rights awarded corporations through Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission be reversed. All those in favor of passing this resolution, please raise your cards and raise them nice and high for our counters. I'm so glad we picked a nice color. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion carries. Next on our docket is the resolution on the divestment from large banks. Ask the hearing moderator, Dennis Holmgerland, to come forward. All the way from the back.
I'm Dennis Hollingerland, pastor at Wayside United Church of Christ in Federal Way, Washington. I was the moderator of this hearing for the resolution brought by the Justice and Witness Ministry Committee. We didn't mess with the whereases because I told them they couldn't. And unlike my congregation, they listened to me. So there were two pieces. The first, therefore, be it resolved. We discussed quite diligently. There were some amendments proposed that didn't pass. So that paragraph stands as is. Under the be it further resolved, we added a sentence, and where is our scribe? Mary will read the sentence that was added.
I think we were trying to also get it on the computer. I don't know if it is. I'm Mary Miller from North Shore. And to add to the be it further resolved, the second half, it stands as it's printed, that other churches and individuals, etc., down, and we added one phrase on the very end so that it reads, institutions that are most favorably aligned with the promotion of the common good, where alternatives that may be available include UCC funds and Cornerstone, community development banks, regional banks, and credit unions.
And so the wonderful group that was in that room that had a lot of discussion came to a consensus and voted to present the resolution and recommend it with that addition.
If I could have the author of that resolution or the chief sausage maker of that resolution speak on its behalf.
Lauren Cannon, recently called to Keystone United Church of Christ, Wallingford, Seattle. There are many authors. I serve on the Justice and Witness Ministries Committee, and the long, overarching goal we had was to spark conversation in every setting of our church. And we followed from the General Synod 28 resolution, which was approved, and it was entitled, Putting Our Money Where Our Values Are, Evaluating Church Financial Relationships. And we were moved by the language there that said, faithfully examine their relationships with financial institutions, and where practical and prudent, deliberately move toward relating to financial institutions that have records of fair lending, business and investing practices as each body discerns in its setting. And the Pacific Northwest Conference Justice and Witness Ministries Committee seeks to empower our board of our conference to do research on our behalf and investigate options that might be more aligned with our social justice commitments. And so you'll see page 31, if you're looking at the booklet, the goal is really for each church to garner some cover to be able to take up these very complex, difficult conversations and apply it in the ways that make the most sense in your setting. The conference has, over the past 2 to 3 years, moved accounts. The office tells us that, you know, that began as a practical consideration, but really we now have the opportunity to make that more of a moral conversation. So our accounts are currently at Banner Bank, but the credit card of the conference links to Bank of America, and our group had great debates about just what constitutes a relationship. If, you know, the Bank of America credit card is still owned by Visa or MasterCard, is our relationship with Bank of America or with even bigger institutions. And so the way things were amended allowed for what folks were comfortable with.
Thank you. I invite any questions, comments, statements in opposition or in favor of this resolution.
Mark Travis, Congregational Church on Mercer Island. I was really excited to be part of this group because I'm totally for the, statements about the injustice the banks have put upon us. But I was very confused in the meeting, and I voted no on this because I felt that the whereas statements need to be more inclusive of all the banks, not just Bank of America. If we no longer had our funds in Bank of America, I felt that we needed to be more expansive in the descriptions of the other banks. And while I give great thanks for the hard work the committee has done, I'm going to be voting no just because I feel like the whereas statements need to be more inclusive of the other banks and the injustices they've put upon us. I mean, I'd have to amend a whole bunch of these whereas statements. So I would.
No, just to be a result.
What's that? Oh, well, I mean, for me, I would have just taken out the first be it resolved and just had the second be it resolved. I have nothing to add to it.
So are you making a motion to eliminate the first be it resolved?
No, I was just going to say I'm voting no because I feel like we need to totally rework all the whereases to make it more inclusive of all the other banks that we're bringing into this injustice and encouraging our congregations and our conference to be faithfully examining all the different financial assets that we have, because we're not fully in Bank of America anymore, except for our credit card.
Thank you.
Dan Stern, Broadview Community United Church of Christ, Seattle. I speak in favor of this motion. It's I felt that we didn't get as much conversation about the extremely important justice concerns in our discussion, although they were there, and I think most of us know what they are. Because I felt, intuited an elephant in the room that some people understand the facts and some people don't. It's not so much a question of hard facts as a question of symbolizing an intent. And since Bank of America can symbolize big banks, and that was the bank that we had formerly been most invested in, I think it names and claims the same thing that other big banks do in an appropriate manner and makes it specific. The other thing that the amendment, the wonderful amendment, I think added was that we are blessed in Washington State with a wide array of 1930s born credit unions that have become since those days kind of obscure to most people's awareness. Even in smaller communities, there are community banks and there are credit unions. And what we found at Broadview in transferring our banks from Chase and Bank of America was a simplicity that was practically advantageous to us. Our checking gains interest that was more than our former savings at Bank of America. There were a lot of wonderful surprises that I didn't know as pastor that our people didn't realize. You could still go to ATMs in other countries because they are a network all over of these smaller institutions. So I think that allowed us some options to do some inquiries and to learn that there are alternatives. And it's symbolic of a movement in that direction. I'm probably out of time. Thank you.
Rich Gamble, Keystone United Church of Christ. One of the sausage makers on this one as well, because it went through justice and witness ministry from a local church. The intent here was not to exclude other banks that are doing wrong. The intent here was to use the specificity of our particular relationship with the bank that we still have a credit card with, to highlight the connection between that bank and a lot of what's going on in our public banking system. I would encourage you, there are great resources that talk about all sorts of big banks out there, and we certainly didn't want to exclude any of them. But for the purpose of this resolution, we wanted to just focus on one with specificity, with the hopes that you could then take that sort of insight and apply it to whatever bank you have.
Jeanette Solomini, Plymouth Congregational Church in Colfax. Whereas I didn't like the whereases, and whereas I choose to bank with Chase because I like my local branch, and whereas I think that the first therefore be it resolved is kind of pointless, I do really like the second one. I think it is I was in this committee, so I think it is extremely important whether or not churches decide to leave their big banks if they're at one, or stay with them, because their big banks do a lot of local community work. I mean, in small communities, if there's a big bank, they're often huge donors to local programs. They employ local people. I know every single person in my local branch. In fact, half of them are my next door neighbors. So that's a big difference for me. I don't worry about the bigger bank issue as much, and maybe I should, but in my little local community, they are providing employment and opportunity. But I still think it is extremely important that all the churches take a look. We so often get caught up in doing things the same way. We've always done them, banking with the same bank because we've always banked there. And it probably would be a good chance, a good opportunity for every church to just take a look and see if there is a better opportunity at a local credit union, or with the UCC's funds, or with Cornerstone, or any of the other opportunities that there may be out there for banking. It might make more sense, and it may make perfect sense for you to stay right where you are. But we need to look at it and not just be stuck where we are, because that's where we've always been.
Call the question.
Call the question. Let's go to in debate. All those in favor? All those opposed? Abstaining? This is a prudential resolution, so it requires a simple majority. All those in favor, please raise your tags. All those opposed? And all those abstaining? The motion carries. The resolution passes. At this time, I direct you to your packet, and in your packet you will find a one-page paper that I pointed out to you, I think yesterday at one of our first plenaries. One side, it gives an introduction to Liberation Ministries. The other side gives the mission statement change for the Global Ministries Committee. I'd like to invite Ed Evans to come forward to talk a little bit about this mission statement change, the rationale behind it, and what is being changed.
Thank you. I'm Ed Evans, the Squamish United Church of Christ and Peninsula United Church of Christ. It's one of those churches that's modeled after the apartment model. That's out on the North Olympic Peninsula in Squim, Maryland. It's louder. Do you want me to start again?
Yes, please.
I'm Ed Evans, a member of Squamish United Church of Christ, also a member of Peninsula United Church of Christ, which is a home church. that's modeled a bit after what Ben was talking about, this new emerging thing that's happening. And we serve communities in Port Townsend, Port Ludlow, Port Angeles, and Sequim. I've been a member of the Global Ministries Committee for 4 years now. And during that entire time, we have had people from the Christian Church, the Disciples of Christ, as a part of our group. But it's been very loose. It's been very informal. And it was feeling like we needed to do something to authorize and recognize that relationship, much in the same way that the national church setting is done, with the creation of the Common Global Ministries Board. So what we have before us is simply a change in the description of who we are as a committee. It recognizes our brothers and sisters in the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ. It's an attempt to provide some language that equalizes us so that we are the same number of UCC folks and DOC folks. We have already, as a committee, elected a co-chairman of the group from the Disciples of Christ. Marvin Eckfeld is that co-chairman. What we want to do, and this is language that already has been approved by our brothers and sisters in the Disciples. So they bought into this language and said we want to be co-partners, equal the whole way. And what we're asking you to do right now is to affirm that with this vote.
So at this time, we entertain any questions or comments in favor of or in opposition of this change to their description. I hear a call for the question. All right. To end debate, those in favor of ending debate, raise your tag. And opposed? Abstaining? Okay. Voting to change the description, vision statement of the Global Ministries Committee to make it more in line with, in conjunction with the DOC. All those in favor, please raise your pink cards. All those opposed, and all those abstaining. The motion carries, and the bylaws, that description changes. At this time, the plenary, I gave up my watch for the timer. Oh, thanks. At this time, we have on our schedule to have the report and the vote on the 2013 budget in our next plenary. We have a little bit of time left remaining in this plenary. I'm wondering if those who were at that budget hearing would feel comfortable doing a report on the budget now, and then we could vote on it at the next plenary. Would that be all right? Or if we have time, maybe we can vote on it. Right, and that one will be in the 5th plenary. A question was just raised to me, what about Liberation Ministries? I have communicated with that delegation that they would be introduced and have a chance to speak at the 5th plenary. And so just so that way I'm not springing a change on them, I want to stick with that. But thank you for raising that question. So is that what we're doing right now? So I think we're distributing the financial reports now, so that way we can do a discussion. Do you already have them on the table? You should have a financial report on your table. If you do not, if you could raise your pink tag so we can make sure your table gets the necessary paperwork.
Brandon?
Yes.
They're confused because they think there are changed versions. It's the same as what they got in the packet.
Yeah, it's the same. Okay. There you go. Could you say that again at a microphone just in case no one heard you?
It's the same as what was available pre-meeting. There are only a few changes. The ones on the table are just extra. Does anyone still need one?
I see a hand over here.
I'd like to invite Martha Baldwin, our treasurer.
Good afternoon. Martha Baldwin from Kirkland Congregational Church, treasurer there and treasurer for the Pacific Northwest Conference. Do we have the overhead ready of the 2012 at a glance?
We're scrambling.
Okay.
We thought it was after the break. So
we did too, but we'll proceed and get this number stuff over with. If that's okay with everybody.
So which one do you want up on
the one with the pie charts?
Okay, let's get what I got. Put it up for that. Pie chart. What's it called? I like PDF. It's the at a glance budget? It's actually on the blog. You get on the blog. Can't get there quickly. Surprised how much. Can't get the blog.
Well, I'll just go ahead and proceed without the actual visual. 2011 was, we were worried about how the year would come out, and we finished about $10,000 in the black in our operating budget. Even with OCWM being down about $55,000, we kept the expenses down as well and came out $10,000 in the black. And both camps carried their own as well. So overall, we finished, despite dire predictions, we finished the year in good shape. That having been said, moving into 2013, we had a hearing this morning, and we just had some minor changes, and those are on the spreadsheet on the wall. If you have your...
Martha?
Yes. Oh, there's the pie chart. Okay. The pie chart with the conference receipts of $1.7 million, about half of that was... Oh, half of the receipts were from camp fees. And let me look at my pie chart. 29% of our income came from OCWM. The green part is contributions, 15%, and a small amount for dues and fees, and then investment earnings. If you go to the expense side,
further down, page 2 to the right. Page 2.
there it is. You'll notice that the conference expenses were $1.9 million, about $112,000 in the red. 94,000 of that was unrealized losses on our investments. So just a small piece from some of other funds were about $8,000 negative. Are there any questions on 2011's results? I wanted to add also that we continued our work on cleaning up funds and cleaning up fund balances. So now every single reserve fund on the conference books has dollars in the bank to back it. So we're at that point of clarity, transparency, and I'm just real pleased to be able to announce that. Yeah. And through faith and trust and hope, we continue to finish each year in the black, and I'm just grateful for that as well. Moving forward to 2013, the budget was based pretty much off of 2012. At the hearing this morning, we had a few changes, and I will, they're on the wall, but I will also read them out loud. On your page 2 of the report of the budget, it's under leadership committees, the Committee on Ministry, we proposed increasing that from $5,500 is $6,000. And where is that $500 going to come from? Well, I had 2 pastors come together and give me $20 right now after the sermon this morning. So, now we have to find $480 more. I'm not worried about it. I have faith.
Pass the hat.
Pass the hat. We also, under leadership committees, we added a budget line for partners in education of $200, and we eliminated the Christian education task force that had been budgeted $200 because that has been disbanded. So that's just a minor change in title. And then the third change was under mission support. Previously, we had $1,000 going to Pacific School of Religion, and then Seattle University Seminary had $2,000, and it was discussed and decided that we should just equalize those contributions so that we're not favoring one seminary over the other. We actually have a few more students at Pacific than Seattle University, and we want to do something to show our covenantal support for the 2 seminaries. So the projected income for 2013 is $527,000, and the projected expenses before this change are $575,000, so there's a deficit of about $49,000 that is being funded from prior year surpluses, so we're not too worried about meeting that. And we feel that this balanced budget. Are there any questions?
Or you. I don't know.
And seeing the amount of time that we still had remaining in this plenary, and in an attempt to make the most of our time, I asked each of you, and I asked our tech team as well as Martha to scramble, to pull together, to move from what had been originally said from the next plenary into this one. So thank you all for making that adjustment, and sorry to put you in any sort of rush or effort to scramble. My thought would have been that we'd be able to give the treasurer's report, and that we'd have a time to look at it, and that we could vote in the next plenary. However, if there's no questions, I wonder if we couldn't vote on it now. So pardon me, is there questions?
Just one, I'm sorry, I couldn't find it in the thing. We have been supporting the Faith Action Network and advocacy, interfaith advocacy arm for this conference in the state. Are we continuing, and what's the level?
Yes, that is on page 3 or 4, under second line down under mission support. There's, again, $12,000 budgeted towards that.
Great, thank you very much.
I'm Andy from Seattle. I remember somebody mentioning self-care for our conference minister yesterday. I'm just wondering what the budgetary discussion was on an associate.
Unfortunately, we've been postponing that. We do have some money budgeted for, we have $15,000 budgeted for special consultants to fill part of that role. We have started a reserve to build up for that, but we're not able to afford that yet at this time.
Chip Laird, Community Congregational United Church of Christ.
Pullman, Washington. Hate that long name. So first I want to just say thank you to all the people that are clarifying the budget, which it is getting more clear. And so I appreciate having more faith that we can actually know where the money is and how much money we have. So thank you for that. One of the things I just wanted to raise, and this is more a point of information than a question, is that our money that we have been giving to campus ministries in the area through CMHE, which is an organization that is going away, is gone. So it's easy just to forget that we ever funded campus ministry, but there is a good progressive campus ministry in our state happening on the eastern side. Another reason that we may forget, because many of you are on the west side, but the common ministry at WSU is undergoing a change from a progressive Christian campus ministry to an interfaith campus ministry. And so it is very much in line with our openness, our inclusivity, our quest to actually serve students wherever they are. And it's a tenuous time right now for institutions, and this is an institution that's trying to actually experiment and go through some of those changes that all of us are trying to do in our churches as well. So I just wanted to say, let's not forget. And I know that there's not money probably this year for that.
Time's up.
So let's not forget. Campus ministry.
I'm Jennifer Russell from Prospect UCC in Seattle. The question I had was, we're talking about budgets and we're talking about 2012, 2013, and one of those numbers is the number for OCWM that comes out of our local churches. So I'm hearing that, and then on the table over there in the display area, there's these bright red and white flyers that we're supposed to take and sign saying this is how much Prospect is going to give in this year ahead. And so I'm wondering, when do we have that opportunity to let you know when what we are going to give?
We right now have a budgeted amount of $498,000. I don't know off the top of my head how many churches we have firm commitments from. If you know that your church has not given a firm commitment of a pledge to the conference office, we would be pleased to receive those this weekend. We are eventually switching over to a new fiscal year so that when the annual meeting takes place, there will be a new fiscal year starting shortly after that on May 1st each year. So if you haven't printed a pledge yet, we would welcome it from you this weekend. And if you already have, thank you.
Hi, Andy again. One more question. Will the banking resolution that we just passed have any effect on this budget?
I don't think so, because all of the conference accounts are with Banner Bank now, except for the credit card. So we've already made the switch. Thanks.
I move we accept the 2013 budget.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the 2013 budget for the Pacific Northwest Conference.
As amended?
As amended. Is there any more discussion on this?
Call for the question.
Okay. Question has been called. All in favor of ending debate, raise your tag. Thank you. All opposed? Noted. Thank you. Abstentions? All those in favor of adopting the 2013 budget as amended for the Pacific Northwest Conference? And opposed? And abstaining? Thank you very much. Thank you. Again, many thanks for your flexibility and for your willingness to make adjustments as we had a little bit of extra time to move and complete that item of business. With that, we will go into recess until our next plenary. We have a little extra time to choose your workshop, or in my case, prepare for your workshop. And we'll see you back here. Yes, Gene. If I can have your attention for just one moment, our annual meeting chair has a quick announcement.
We just had could I have your attention for just a moment, please? It doesn't affect everyone, but it affects some of you. The workshops have had to do a little jiggling. Some got left off a work order. That never happens, does it? Never. So, for the people who are planning on attending the Spirituality of Retreats workshop, you will be in the Oak Room, just down this little hallway. Be in Oak. For those people who will be in the Justice in Action panel that was going to be in Oak, we will be meeting in the chapel. Okay, and that's down on Wing 3. So, thank you very much for putting up with that. Yeah, John?
Just a point of information for you. Everything y'all just discussed and decided in its modified forms within 5 minutes will all be on the blog. If you don't know how to get there, keep looking at the screen for the address. If you don't have a computer to get there with, make friends with somebody carrying a shiny thing.